So I now want to talk about Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. So Dabo Swinney has been the head coach at Clemson for Clemson football since 2008. That's 13 years. And during that 13-year stretch, Dabo Swinney has won over 80% of his games. He has a record overall of 140 wins and 33 losses. He is 10-7 in bowl games, and he has won 2 national championships. Both of those national championship victories coming over Alabama, led by head coach Nick Saban. Alabama might be the best program in college football currently right now. So that's a big accomplishment for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. You know, everyone talks about how Dabo Swinney's great, but we rarely talk about why that's the case. What has made Dabo Swinney so successful with the Clemson Tigers? What has made Clemson such a successful program? Okay, here's the thing. What makes Dabo Swinney an elite head coach is this, at least for college football. What makes him an elite college football head coach? This is what makes him elite. Dabo Swinney is a player's head coach. Okay? See, when you're a college football head coach, you're going to have to relate to teenagers, 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, things like that, because you have to recruit those players to play for you. You're talking to not 25-year-olds, not 26-year-olds. You're coming into the living room and the dining room and the family room of high schoolers, guys that are still maturing, learning to be men. And you have to convince those guys that you're a great program for them to be a part of. So I always talk about how, when you look at Urban Meyer is going to be the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a whole different animal in the NFL compared to college football, because in college football, you're dealing with a bunch of kids, guys that are still maturing and maturing into the grown men they are going to be. In the NFL, you're dealing with millionaires and guys that have egos, but you have to be able to groom and develop guys in college. And I think that Dabo Swinney is a player's head coach. He really relates to his players. He's a guy that seems very passionate about what he does, and he's a guy that I personally would like to play for. I haven't met the guy personally, but based on the reports I hear and based on the stories I hear about Dabo Swinney and based on how I see him interacting with his players, I think that that's a guy that I definitely would be comfortable investing my future in, meaning I'm going to be a part of that program for 3 to 4 years, and he's a guy that I'd be comfortable having him as my head coach and my quote-unquote guidance counselor, And players have talked about Dabo Swinney with rave reviews. They rave about this guy, and let's be honest, Dabo Swinney is a great recruiter. And I think that Dabo Swinney is very honest with his players. Like, he is very upfront about what players' roles are going to be. Like, Dabo Swinney recently had an interview with Colin Cowherd on the Colin Cowherd podcast, several months ago, where he talked about, hey, I'm going to be honest with these players, And he talked about how if guys are not willing to get on the bandwagon with Clemson very early, like if we offer you a scholarship and you're not going to take that right away, we're going to move on, So I think that Dabo is a very honest guy. He wants players that 100% are all in with his program. And I think that he's also very honest with his players, like I said, about what their role will be at Clemson. Like, he's going to tell you straight up, hey, you maybe need to gain a little bit of weight. Maybe you need to lose some weight. Maybe you need to get faster. But if you put in the work and you develop and you want to be part of our program, you can do something special. And maybe you can win a national championship with us. I mean, let's be honest, people. I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier with Nick Saban. I'm going to put you guys to the test, where I asked the question. And you have to get this question right or else you're going to die. So, do or die question for you right here. You get this question wrong, you're going to be executed. So here's the question. Do you believe over the next 4 years, Clemson is going to win a national title? If you answer the question yes, then you just proved my point, because you were forced to be honest with yourself, and you were honest with me and said Clemson over the next 4 years probably going to win a national championship. So if you said over the next 4 years Clemson is going to win a national championship, well, if you have a student enrolling in Clemson and they're going to be a part of that program for 4 years, more than likely, probably going to win a national championship. So that's one thing that Dabo Swinney can tell his recruits. If you come play for me, you probably are going to win a national championship during your 4 years here. Okay? And also, one other thing that's very underrated about Dabo Swinney, other than the fact that he recruits very well, like Dabo Swinney, actually, if you look at his recruiting classes, he doesn't have a ton of top 5 recruiting classes. He gets guys in his program that fits his culture. Of course, he's going to get a Xavier Thomas, a Trevor Lawrence, a Brian Brees, top of the level stud players that can play anywhere in the country. But what defines Dabo Swinney's recruiting classes are the guys that you don't hear about. The guys that he develops from the ground up. The Hunter Renfros, the Grady Jarretts, guys that were maybe not the most known players in high school, but they went to Clemson and they developed under Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. And here's one other very underrated thing about Dabo Swinney. Compared to Nick Saban is losing assistant coaches and coordinators left and right every single year. Meanwhile, most of Dabo Swinney's coaching staff decides to stay at Clemson. You want to know why? Because Dabo Swinney provides a family atmosphere. I'm not saying that Nick Saban doesn't provide a family atmosphere, but I think that Dabo is a little bit more, a wrap your arms around these guys type of coach. He's going to be very appreciative of these guys. He's going to get time to really get to know his staff. And for whatever reason, a guy like Brett Venables, who is getting calls to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL pretty much every single year for the past 5 years, there's a reason why Brett Venables decides to stay at Clemson. Because it's a family atmosphere. Because it's a successful program. Because he believes things are all great at Clemson. Why should I leave? Okay? So that's a very underrated thing about Dabo Swinney is that he keeps his coaching staff intact. They're not turnaround coaching staffs every single year like Alabama. Guys want to stay at Clemson and coach. And here's one other thing about Dabo Swinney. He makes adjustments very well. Like, for example, Clemson was getting their teeth kicked in by Alabama a couple of years ago in the national championship game when Deshaun Watson was their starting quarterback. And in the second half, Dabo Swinney made adjustments. Deshaun Watson was able to rally the troops. The Clemson Tigers win that game. And so many times we've seen the Clemson Tigers make halftime adjustments and come out the gates blazing in the second half. And a lot of these big games versus the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, a lot of these big games that Dabo Swinney wins is won by the second half heroics of the Clemson Tigers. And that's a credit to Dabo Swinney for being able to make adjustments. And here's another thing. Dabo Swinney is a fighter. He had to fight to keep his job at Clemson after his third season there as the head coach when he went below 500. His record was below 500 in his third year. Dabo Swinney used to be a college football wide receiver. At Alabama, he was scrappy, he was tough. He had to fight. He wasn't this physically gifted guy, where he was 6'5", built out of a lab like a Calvin Johnson. No. Dabo had to be scrappy. He had to fight. And I think that the players and the Clemson program has taken on that personality trait of Dabo Swinney, because if Dabo Swinney is a fighter, his players are going to be fighters. They're going to fight to the very end. So that's what makes Dabo Swinney an elite head coach, in my opinion. He's done a great job at Clemson. I believe they're set up to be a great program for the next 10 years. The ACC is not very good. And outside of, Alabama, maybe Ohio State, I think Clemson is right up there as far as being an elite program. In no particular order, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, and Oklahoma, to me, those are the top tier programs. Those are the programs that are gonna run college football for the foreseeable future until someone does something about it. So Dabo Swinney's a great guy, and that's what I think makes him an elite head coach for the Clemson Tigers in college football. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.